Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ayman Taleb, and this is the show about justice, a weekly talk show discussing the unjust obstacles and challenges facing American Muslims. We're coming to you live today, Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, a day known as Giving Tuesday. You can catch new episodes of the show about justice live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central on MLFA's Facebook page and YouTube channel. That's 6 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard, and 3 p.m. Pacific. Returning to be our guest today on the show tonight is Charles Swift, the director of the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America. Charlie was named by the National Law Review as one of the top 100 legal minds in the nation. He is a retired lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, Judge Advocate General Corps. Charlie is most known for winning the U.S. Supreme Court case Hamdan versus Rumsfeld for his client Salim Ahmed Hamdan. Following his military career, he was a visiting professor and head of the Humanitarian Law Clinic at Emory University School of Law in Atlanta, Georgia, before leaving to enter private practice in Seattle. Charlie has been a regular contributor on the topics of military law and terrorism for national news programs including MSNBC, CNBC, CNN, NPR, and Fox News. He has received numerous awards for his advocacy, including recognition as a distinguished alumnus at Seattle University School of Law, ACLU's Roger Baldwin Medal for Distinguished Service, and was runner-up for Lawyer of the Year in 2005, as well as being named one of the 100 most influential lawyers in 2006 by the National Law Journal. Here at the show about justice, we believe that the U.S. Constitution applies to American Muslims too. We should not fear exercising our rights. We should not be suspected or treated differently because of our faith, ethnicity, or national origin. We don't want special treatment. We want equal treatment. Nothing more, nothing less. Please like and share this program, comment below, and don't forget to click on that follow or subscribe button for the latest from MLFA. If you need MLFA's help, reach out to us. If you like what we do, support MLFA. In tonight's episode, I will be discussing with Charlie how your donations to MLFA make a positive impact on the entire American Muslim community, and how the legal team at the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America, the CLCMA, challenges government security measures which encroach upon the constitutional liberties guaranteed to all. He joins us tonight from Dallas, Texas. Welcome, Charlie. It's good to have you back on the show.
It's great to be here on Giving Tuesday because your donors are why we exist.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I love talking to them.
Yes, sir. And I hope that tonight we'll have this platform to discuss something very important about, especially on today, Giving Tuesday, where we're really discussing the impact that the donors' hard-earned money is put to good use. That CLCMA was established in 2014. It's in its 6th year, going on 7th. In the pre-interview, you shared with me that CLCMA went through or goes through 3 phases. Can you share those phases with us?
Sure. We are employing the learn, do, teach method in those phases. Our first 3 years, you've talked about the 6 years, was spent primarily learning. We learned through multiple ways. As you mentioned, I'd come from the national security terrorism, but that was primarily criminal. After that, there were a lot of other impacts in immigration and in civil. The national security policy was adversely affecting Muslims. Key things we learned was that the government's policies were really based on an idea of guilt by association. We also learned that most Muslims were not being afforded due process, even though they were suffering significant harms.
And Charlie, I'm sorry, can you back up a little bit? Just for our audience members, we've talked about guilt by association on the show, but since you're on, I want to take this opportunity and have you explain, with your expertise and your background, what does guilt by association mean?
Okay. Constitutionally, the government is forbidden under the Establishment and Free Exercise Clause from targeting someone solely because they're a Muslim or a person of faith or any part on it. The government gets around that. How do they get around it? Well, they say, somebody who associates or follows this sheikh may be dangerous. We're not targeting his religious beliefs. We're targeting who he's associated with. Maybe somebody has a third cousin in Pakistan who's associated with something. We're not targeting the fact that they're a Muslim or come from Pakistan. We're targeting that they're associated with this person. Maybe they've given to a charity in the past that was later designated. We're not targeting them for supporting children. We're targeting them for being associated with that charity. In other words, they build out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 degrees of association. They think that association means something toward terrorism. They're not targeting terrorists. They're targeting the people who are in some way, usually unknown, associated with them. And so they've built out this large complex, whether it's a criminal trial where they target family members solely because they were associated, or it's a no-fly list or a watch list solely because of what somebody else may have been associated with, may have met, somebody might have met in college, something like that. And these have incredible chilling effects on the Muslim population, because you get to the point where you go, gosh, I can't be associated with anybody. I need to know them absolutely before I have a talk with them. And let's never, ever talk about politics, and never, ever, 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 ever talk about what our family members might be doing overseas or anything like that. And so there is this absolute fear of association. And the reason for that is that the government uses it. Why does the government use this? Because they have no idea what a prospective terrorist looks like. They absolutely have none. That was the other thing we learned. They actually don't have a real policy. They're not actually preventing terrorism. They're just running down the people who might be associated with somebody they believe or later find out was a terrorist. And this has an incredibly chilling effect. To give you an idea, we estimate that at least 20,000 people in the United States alone are on a terrorist watch list, primarily because of associations. Now, if you think about that, that's the same level of death that COVID's causing. In the greater population, there are what, 5, 7 million Muslims, or 5 or so million Muslims in America?
Give or take, yeah.
30,000 on it? That's COVID death levels. Totally unacceptable in our society. Totally acceptable for Muslims. And so we're fighting this because, and the really bad part on it is, very rarely do they give any process for the person to show that that the association is harmless. These are star chambers decided by the government without ever telling the individual the benefits or the problems that occurred to them. They don't know why it's happened. And when they do complain about it, the government never tells them why. At most, it tells them, well, you're on a list. But in our experience, so that's what we learned. Then we said, okay, what can we do about it?
So before you go on to what we can do about it, so you were saying that you were learning about all this,
Yes.
these national security policies. It sounds like what you're saying, that because you had to do all this learning, and it sounds like that by and large, national security policies are done. They're not done publicly. They're done in there's some
Absolutely
in secret. That's
an absolute part of it, because it's national security. The courts and other parts afford the government a great deal of, if it's under the rubric of national security, they afford the government a great deal of confidentiality in these processes. So,
right. And I mean, for me, I mean, if I'm an average American, if I see like, the government is keeping us safe from actual terrorists, from violent people that would do Americans harm, that makes a lot of sense. That makes perfect sense.
It absolutely does.
But if you're talking about associations, this is this is the problem, right?
It's an extraordinary problem, and it shows what happens when things are done in the dark. And when things are done in the dark, justice never happens. One Supreme Court justice famously said that sunshine is the best disinfection. And if we're going to cure this, we're going to have to bring a little sunshine into what's actually happening. I'll give you an example from one of our own cases. The Nora Salman trial, the United States versus Salman. She was the wife of the shooter in Orlando, Florida. Because we took that case, some things came out. Not only that they had forced her to falsely confess, and the government's behavior was horrible, but why it might have been horrible. One, the shooter's father was an undercover informant for the FBI.
Right.
I want people to think about that. Undercover informants are supposed to stop terrorism attacks. The worst terrorism attack at the time in the United States since 9/11, and right next to it, his father was an undercover informant. And in fact, they let Omar Mateen go because his father was an undercover informant. It was
Yeah,
more
because he was a person of interest. And then they
they
not
let it go
and
because
then
his father was an
as a
undercover.
and 49 people died in cold blood.
Yes, because they're not pursuing. The next part was that they had no idea what a terrorist actually looks like. That Muslim terrorists are not defined by their religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
They're like every other mass shooter or criminal. Muslims are average, wonderful Americans, etc. All groups have these problems in it. That he was a spouse abuser, that he was a weapons fanatic, that he looked heavily on law enforcement, had a persecution complex, all of these things that go together in any mass shooting that we take a look at. But here we focus on religious beliefs, which had no indication in part on it. They don't follow the real indicators. And again, this is because they're somehow under the idea that if he's associated with an undercover informant, he can't be guilty. Whereas if somebody just happened to brush in as a student once upon a time with somebody who's later entrapped by the FBI 10 years later, he potentially is guilty. The two don't make sense. They don't work. And the quote unquote, stop terrorism attacks that we read about, they stopped this, etc. Each time what you find is that there was an FBI undercover informant, that the people could have never or would have never committed the offense without that person, and they were eventually led down the road to do something. In other words, the FBI is the unwilling and the stupid who they're targeting, not the actual people, because they, again, have no idea. I can run down lists of their intelligence failures repeatedly from our experience and what we've learned. It doesn't work. And this is a really sad part, because the first thing you know about Muslim, or is, quote unquote, these terrorist organizations as a whole, their primary people they kill are Muslims.
Right.
Muslims don't like them. Muslims want them to go away. Most Muslims have significant difference with their faith. Most Muslims are not supportive. The government, however, does not consult Muslims about how to deal with this. So, it's a failed program. Let's look at it. That's what first we learned one of the reasons that they're able to keep all of it hidden is they don't actually broadcast their failures. They don't actually broadcast their numbers. They're never actually accountable. And there's a tremendous amount of money in it. So the next thing we said was, what can we do about it? Mm-hmm. And so we've built a firm that does all three things, because what we found is that the government works on a sliding scale of due process. Okay? This sliding scale means the more evidence we have, the more due process you get. The less evidence we have, the less due process you get. And if we can't make a case at all, then you get no due process, but we're still going to harm you. Okay? We're still going to do things that will be a part of it. So if we have enough to make a criminal case, we'll make that case, potentially. If we don't have enough evidence to make a criminal case, then we'll place you on watch lists. We'll deny you immigration benefits. We will impact your foreign travel by leaking information or giving information to foreign governments that don't have the same ideas that we do about detention. We will, prohibit you and, talk to your business, talk to your employers. We will talk to your, banks. We will make life extraordinarily hard. And we probably won't ever confirm or deny that we're doing it or that you have suffered part on it. So we said, okay, where can we get involved when we need a holistic approach, because the government has an integrated and complete approach. So we built capacities in all three of these. And over the last 3 years, we started to perfect that. The first thing we found was, our first efforts, as we were learning, was really hard because the government has made the law about as obscure as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
The statutes and regulations are buried. When you do ask for something, you don't actually get it. The only way to get anything is to sue. You have to step through multiple procedural hurdles. To give you an analogy, you would think that no sexual harassment ever occurred in Congress. Why? Because there's been no sexual harassment suits.
Okay.
The truth of the reason was Congress made it basically impossible to file one. The administrative steps you had to take were so onerous that no one did it.
Mm.
That they were exhausted at the part on it. They would need an attorney. They needed extraordinary help. And that's what the government's about. So the last 3 years, we've learned how to do that. We've also built our capacity in the criminal cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, where MLFA was taking it on a case-by-case basis, that wasn't building capacity, and it was very expensive. We went from 5 to doing an average of 50 cases a year. Now it's closer to 60. And when we say cases, that's not all our clients. We have, at any given time, more than 100 clients. They're just not cases and part on this. And we built out and we learned, in each case, we learn more. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to have significant success. And 2 reasons for that. 1, we've learned the process. And 2, the government has learned who we are. Mm-hmm. Because we won big early. A lot of times they now settle without it. Well, we need to do, and that's now become a limiting factor for us. So our goal for the next years is to move from an organization that learns because, hey, look, as soon as you figure out how to stop one play, if you're playing any football or any game, mm-hmm. the opposition gets to play too. They'll figure out a new play. And they look at this as a game. Mm-hmm. It's people's lives, but they look at it as a game.
Mm-hmm. Okay? The numbers game for them, probably at the part of it.
Yep. And so in this process, we're going to have to continue to learn how things are changing. So we continue to be, with MLFA's help, learning from people in your mosque and your audience and your donors and all of the people that you outreach to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking of that, I mean, you mentioned, going out, on the outreach level, that MLFA was on the ground over the years at the grassroots level, visiting communities.
It makes us unique. It makes us, I cannot stress this. There are other people that work in some of these areas. The ACLU works in this area. CARE works in some of the areas, not all of them. CCR, the Constitutional Center for the Center for Constitutional Rights. There are others who work in these areas. Mm-hmm. The difference is they don't have the outreach into the masjids that we do. So CARE at a local level has that same outreach, but they don't have the same capacities. They don't specialize. They take on an awful lot of just blatant discrimination.
Right. They have different scope of work. Yeah.
CARE is extraordinarily good at taking on the overt discrimination. I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to discriminate because you're Muslim. Okay? That's the part. We're more geared to taking on the people who are, I'm never going to say that I'm discriminating because you're a Muslim, but of course I am. Right. So we take that on. So
right. And of course, those are the kind of cases like, when we go into the communities and we're doing the presentation, this is when people from our community come forward and say, this is the first time I'm hearing you.
One of the things that people ask me, what's the difference during COVID right now? And I'd say the biggest difference is we've continued our work from home and office. One of the things is we're a national law firm, but because of the nature of federal litigation and the heavy writing and filings that are involved in it, we're able to do that from our houses. And your court hearings are now virtual, and we're able to do all that. In fact, it's made us far more efficient in the period of time because we haven't had to spend money on travel. And so we've been able to keep, the costs down this year in what's been a tough year, and that's good, because we haven't had to cut a single service. Here's the one place we've really seen the impact. MLFA is not out in the masjids. And what we have seen, we could always tell, it was a part of it, our intakes, we could always tell where MLFA had gone that previous week. Because within 5 to 7 days, we'd get 3, 5, 7 case intakes from a particular area. And we go, oh, I wonder, did they have a fundraiser or an outreach or a community education? Did they
Mm-hmm.
deliver yeah, it turns out they did. Got it.
Right.
That's where everybody came from. And that's critical because I don't believe in doing what I call newspaper litigation.
Yeah.
Newspaper litigation is where we hear about this horrible crime or horrible thing, or somebody that reports it. The problem is the press doesn't have all the facts. You don't have a client. Okay. I'm not sure of the injury, and it's going to be very difficult to gauge it. We would rather have a client come in, explain to us what's gone wrong, allow us to gauge their willingness to challenge it, because this is an easy thing to do. Understand, and carefully research the law and then apply. We believe we have a lot more impact that way. That we need to go through a series of process to use the community's money best. And that means clients need to come to us. We, ethically, we're prohibited from advertising per se or soliciting a client directly. That's another problem with newspaper litigation. And so we don't engage in that. The other thing we don't do is we don't bring unmeritorious complaints. We want to make sure we're right. Unlike the litigation you're seeing on television from the Trump campaign, we believe in getting the facts first and not bringing the action. And we want to have a legal basis for what we do. So in part that's why MLFA is so absolutely critical. This is these are hard things, and this is a requirement of trust. And MLFA built trust in the community. They're the access, how they learn about us. So that's a critical step in A, getting clients, because we're not going to make a difference without them, and B, learning about what's going on early on the ground before anybody else hears about it, and C, being able to take a slightly different approach than anyone else. I would, the ACLU, CCR, they have similar expertise to us, but they don't have the community ties. CARE has community ties, but at the local level, they don't have the expertise, and their mission is not just nationally security focused. I like to say that, CARE and MLFA, CLSMA exist to cover the gamut of needs.
Mm-hmm.
We're not competitors. We're compatriots. Okay. And that's important. But both organizations are successful because they're on the ground. Okay. Now, in part on the thing. So that's part on it. The absolute thing we need to do going forward in the part is we think that after 6 years, we've done something. We've first established and we've learned how these policies, how things are affecting us broadly across the country. Because if we see it in California, then we see it in New York, and then we see it in Florida, we go, hey, that's a national policy. That's not just some guy. That's how they're doing business. We've learned how that works. We've learned and we've gotten better at how to, bring actions on that. We don't have to invent the wheel every time. We've also developed methods of proven success. Whether it's in the criminal cases where we've won, where no one else has, achieved the lowest sentences, in those where it wasn't factually developed, we have the issues, we understand how to do it. To the no-fly list, where we're the only ones that I'm aware of out there challenging things, to, on the due process, to many of the immigration parts, which we take on, I think with a really well integrated approach. And one of that parts is, in immigration, we're now winning without ever getting past the first filing, because the government gives up. They send it back, they settle, they give the person, after 8, 10, 15 years, they wouldn't give them their citizenship. We walk in, we get that. We want to increase the numbers. And how to increase the numbers is, hey, we need more support. If you give me another attorney, that's another people who can be helped. But we want to do more than that. And this is where teaching comes in. We want to take what we've learned and teach the community more on how to help itself. B, teach other lawyers how to do this, because I don't think it's rocket science. Much like finding a cure or a vaccine. It's really hard to find the vaccine. It's not real hard to administer it. You do need medical training. You need to understand it. You need to understand what the side effects and what the downsides would be. But we can get others to do this. And we want to find people who are willing to do it pro bono. And part of the reasons the bars to pro bono is they don't understand the area of the law. They don't want to do any harm, so they're reluctant to enter into it. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand the injustice on why I should spend my resources here. And so we want to teach. We also want to teach the public, the lawmakers, and the judges about the impacts of the policies. And we do that by showing them case after case after case. See, one case doesn't prove anything to a judge. It can be an anomaly. 50 cases, and all were the same. They start to have the weight of empirical evidence. Then the judge asks, what's going on here? That's how you change things, okay? Mm-hmm. So in this process, what we want to do, this is the learn, do, teach. And so the next phase of and this will be a continuous cycle. Mm-hmm. I like to say it would be wonderful that we have the game plan to win no matter what. But there are two things that we were talking off air, and I said the first thing I told you is what people just witnessed is no amount of money can buy results. Okay? You can't buy results with money. What I do know is that if you don't do it, you guarantee results because the government's going to win and walk off. Mm-hmm. The government counts on us not showing up. So our first step is to show up. We learn, and as we learn, we do teach. What the idea is to showing up.
Yeah. So we have to be able to have the courage as well as the funding to challenge when a government comes forward and says A, B, and C. We'll say, hey, wait a second, I need my day in court.
Now, I've heard too often from some. I love talking to donors. But I know that donors are often worried because of that. Well, if I associate, you just talked about that guilt by association. If I associate with you, won't they hurt me? You know what? Actually, no. The first part on that is, remember when I said they couldn't target you because you were Muslim? Okay? They can't target you because you gave to a legal cause. One of the absolute other protected rights is the right to counsel. And last I checked, there were all 9 lawyers, or all 9 judges on the Supreme Court of the United States were lawyers. Mm-hmm. And one thing I know, whether they're a conservative or a liberal, they all respect the right to counsel. That's professional courtesy. So that's one of the most protected rights. And so you don't associate. The other part is that this is the smartest way because of how we do things. You're not associating yourself with any of our clients. An independent board of Muslim attorneys decides who our clients will be. You're associating yourself with an organization dedicated to civil liberties and religious freedoms. For preserving and fighting guilt by association, those are the most noble of causes. The individual client will be chosen by somebody else. And, I encourage people to go to CLCMA's website and read about the attorneys who make that choice. They make those choices. They decide how the money's spent. I don't decide that. And those are brilliant parts on how to do it that protect you. The other part that I like to say is that impact litigation requires somebody to stand up. And when I say to each person who becomes a client of ours, and I talk to almost every person before they become a client, I say, hey, look, we'll stand with you. Your community stands behind us if you have the courage to go forward. And understand, everyone who stands forward has extraordinary courage. Whether it is to let the public know that I've been labeled a terrorist, or to face a lifetime in jail, to fight back on travel restrictions, risk the government taking retaliatory action toward them. Mm-hmm. Key for us to go forward is, I say, MLFA started out representing community leaders. That's one where we still do that on occasion. Mm-hmm. That's one where we've shifted, because I don't believe, A, they're not targeting as many community leaders as they once did, and we certainly are there if they are. But B, targeting community leaders is not you don't make major changes with them ordinarily. Ordinarily, you make major changes with little people. And it is the march of the anonymous person that allows us to make these changes. And these people need you to stand up for them. Again, I encourage you to go to our website, go to MLFA's website, and read the bios and stories of some of the people who've been helped. Each one of these people had the courage to say, I was targeted. That's not an easy thing to do. And I think that it's essential that we say, hey, look, for those of you who are willing to stand up, we'll stand behind you. Now, everybody can't stand up because everybody wasn't targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And, too often the government's position on not target is they're less likely to target somebody with a lot of money. They're a difficult target. That's just the reality of how they pick targets. They go for the easy people.
Mm-hmm. The low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. The idea that we're unlikely to be challenged is where they're going to be the most abusive. Just the way it is. And so when we say, hey, look, when you do that, we'll be there, we have an impact. Our job is to make sure what we want to do is build a just society. And you asked that question at the very beginning. You said, hey, look, isn't it good to prevent people from doing violence? Yes. Yes, it is good to do these things. Mm-hmm. I'm not against that. But we need to do it in line with our constitutional values. Okay?
Right.
Our values make sure that the only people who are targeted are the real threats. Okay, how do we know the threats? Because we can prove it. Okay?
What an obvious answer.
Proving it. We don't need to do this in the dark. Okay? Mm-hmm. We've got that. We can set all of that out. We don't need to hide what we did. Mm-hmm. Secrecy in these cases, and I've been doing these cases now for 15 years. Secrecy isn't designed to protect the government and their methodologies. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's designed to protect the government's embarrassments and abuses. And if you don't believe this, this is the one place. Carter Page just filed a $75 million lawsuit against the FBI for its conduct in investigating him under quote unquote national security. Now, Carter Page, former government official, he's aligned with the presidential campaign. He's got a lot of money and he's recognized. So you think about that. That would be an area where they'd play it straight, right? Yet their own parts sat there and say, nope, they lied, they cheated, an attorney changed things. I want you to think for a moment. If they do that under those circumstances, what do they do when a Muslim's involved? Just some lie. Do they expect to ever be challenged? No. They don't expect to be challenged. And until we sit there and say, hey, look, not only should you expect, no, you will be. Because, we'd like to believe, a friend of mine says that principles only matter when they're inconvenient. But what I've found in the government's part is they're only principled when it's convenient. Right. And we're there to make sure that it's going to be very inconvenient if you don't. And that's how we're going to get there. Because we can't sit there and say to, if we started an idea on this, like somehow like defund the police, let's defund the FBI. I can think of ways the government FBI could spend its money more. They're spending about half their budget, somewhere around $3.5 billion on this every year. And I could think of better ways they could spend that money. But I'm not going to hold my breath for defunding. I think what we need to do is prove that it's a waste of money and an abuse of civil liberties, and then we'll reorient the funding. But making cries is not going to get it done. And so this is how we attack this process. We believe in it. We've got a track record that shows it can work. We need to amplify it. There is an idea in this. In my faith, this is a program on faith. In my faith, I'm a Catholic. Mm-hmm. But we share Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And we share Jesus Christ's belief in his miracles.
Yeah.
One of his most famous miracles is the miracle of the fish feeding the multitude.
Yeah.
In this miracle, a boy gives him but 6 fish, and he feeds the multitude. We've always asked, how did he do that? How did he take 6 fish? And when it was over, there was abundance. They had to gather it up. How did he do this? I believe in my faith that what he did was take the boy's gift and show it to everyone. And when everyone gave, there was an abundance for everyone. That was the genius of Jesus. And then he took that gift through God's help and made it even greater. And made it greater. What it starts with is we have to sit there and say, okay, we're going to give. We're going to be part of this. I need to be a great steward like the disciple. I can't be eating the fish. I got to be giving them out.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be great stewards. But we all as a group, if we share this is not too heavy a burden to carry.
Yeah.
If we carry it together. But if we each carry it individually, we'll never feed the multitudes. And to me, that's the miracle of that faith. And the story it teaches us at every part on it, how I take that miracle, because I deeply believe in it. It was one of Jesus's most incredible miracles. And the one that could teach as much as anything. I know there are many other examples in Islam and the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he accomplished pragmatic miracles through his disciples or through his followers. Mm-hmm. Part of that. And I believe that they share the absolute same belief in our responsibility for our neighbor, that you and I share that belief and our part of it. And in this part, and that's one of the reasons I do this work. I want to say the other part is that as a Catholic, I feel that if I'm not here defending and pointing out an injustice, that I'm part of the injustice. I believe that. I absolutely believe it. And I know that there's an injustice in this country. So we need to defend that. And I'm privileged. It's incredibly privileged to get paid to do what you want to do more than possible. I'm incredibly grateful that you allow me and have trusted me to do this. And I know that that is the feeling of every single attorney at CLCMA. It's an incredible privilege, in part. And we are honored to serve you. We're honored to be part of MLFA's team. And we're honored to be in this part because it's an incredible opportunity. And, I think that one of the greatest things a human being can do is fight injustice. Because fighting injustice requires you to be selfless. Because most people aren't suffering it. It's easy to fight injustice if it's you or to want to. The problem is you can't do it by yourself. It's amazing and incredible to fight injustice when it's someone else. And that, I think, is, there's a great moral good to what we do. And, it's also in keeping, I've said this from the very beginning. We'll do this, learn, do, teach, and we'll keep on it because I think, there's a famous saying in law, let me give you with one of them, is that when the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When the law is on your side, you argue the law. And when neither the facts are on the law or on your side, you pound on the table a lot. I think you're doing something. I would just note that there's been a lot of table pounding lately in the courts in this process. But we don't do that. We take the facts and the law that are on our side and we argue for them. And we try and use the part, not table pounding. We're going to avoid table pounding because in the end, being reasonable wins. It's also something. This is an amazing country. The Constitution and the values that we founded it on are unparalleled in the world. The success of the country, however, is dependent on how generous we're willing to be. Because the success of the country is determined on whether we extend those same protections to others who are not like us. That's the brilliance of the document on part. Its flaw was that at its onset, it treated a whole group of people as non-people and extended almost no rights to them. Its flaw in each part has when we have allowed fear to prevent us from treating people as we would treat ourselves. And, that's because the document is perfect, but people aren't. And so what I know is that this is part of a long struggle. It's a struggle that I believe was ordained by God, that good people would have to fight for their rights. God didn't make it so that you just got anything you wanted by being good. This life is a test, and it's a struggle, and it's an opportunity to do justice. It's an opportunity. God prevents each of our obstacles, in my view, in my faith, are opportunities provided by God.
Just joining.
Is absolutely every struggle is an opportunity that God gave you.
100%.
You should never curse anything that happens in your life, because God has given you an opportunity to show your faith, to help someone else, to overcome adversity, to remain faithful, to build your faith. Each one of those are such opportunities. And I believe that absolutely. I believe that, and I am so thankful that God gave me this opportunity and this challenge. And it's good to be here.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Charles Swift, the director of the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America. We're discussing how the legal team at CLCMA challenges government security measures which encroach upon the constitutional liberties guaranteed to all. Please like and share this program. Comment below, and don't forget to click on that follow or subscribe button for the latest from MLFA. If you need MLFA's help, reach out to us. If you like what we do, support MLFA. So Charlie, we talked about the learning and the doing. Tell us a little bit of and then there's the teaching.
Well, our part is the next part is we build our staff, and that's your support is critical to that, because we need to build in the staff behind the core attorneys that have come here, so that we can take our core attorneys and start having them teach other lawyers how to do it. Mm-hmm. So that we teach an entire generation, both Muslim and non-Muslim alike. Mm-hmm. We need to teach others on the mission. So our next 3 years is devoted. I like to use the example of Christina Jump, who's now the head of our civil department and a super lawyer. Okay. She's amazing.
Yes, she is.
When she and I started out, and you've worked with her, you go, wow. When she and I started out, I did almost every case with her every single time. Mm-hmm. Locked in, because she was a great lawyer, but she didn't know national security. 3 years in, Christine carries her own caseload. I carry my caseload. We've brought on Catherine Brady, who is an expert in immigration law, but she's learning the national security and federal courts aspect, and we're doing things with her. And in a couple of years, she's been here a year, so I expect in the next couple of years she'll be able to do that independently. Mm-hmm. But our job is to take that, what we learned how to do, and then teach others how to do it. Because the first group we teach is our own staffs, the people who come in, so that they can take over cases, so that we can do more cases. So we're multiplying those fish. Okay, we teach that because now they can do more, and we need to do more. Then we go, okay, this is how we've learned how to teach it. We've learned how to standardize it. We've learned how to deliver this. Let's teach Muslim attorneys around the country. Let's hold CLEs, continuing legal education. Let's write about this. Let's write handbooks. Let's not take what we did, another saying famously that we read in Kafala, and hide our light under a bushel basket, but instead get it out so everybody can see it. And that's a unique thing, because we
so sing it from the mountaintops.
You got it. And to teach others so that they can do it, because the number one reason that bars people from helping is they're not sure what to do. I mean, this can be scary stuff. When the government says national security, you gulp, the first time anyway. Of course, I say this, and so you need to be able to educate other lawyers on how to do this. We need to educate the judges. Many of them, that's the first time they've ever seen anything like that. We need to educate the bar associations on what's going on. And all of those things will, grow from here. So that's our next step. Our next step in this is to educate others. And we're in an opportunity time. There's never been a better time for education. We're going to have a new administration. Now, people, that is not a panoply. Let me know. They've already announced their national security team, and I would say that's a return to 2016. And things weren't great in 2016.
Right.
A lot of the policies we fight started under the Obama administration, not under the Trump administration.
Right. So since you brought that up, Charlie, I want to ask, what can we expect from the Biden administration that is different from the Trump administration?
I think that there will be less overt discrimination, but targeting of Muslims is in the DNA of the National Security Organization.
Mm-hmm.
That's in their DNA. They're not going to give that up quickly. They get a tremendous amount of funding for it. We're going to probably have a split government. And one thing that I found is that Democratic administrations are terrified of looking weak on this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they're unlikely to make drastic changes in the overall policies.
Because they don't want to look soft on terrorism. Right. They want to be firm.
Remember, this is an administration that's selling going back to normal, not making radical changes.
Mm-hmm.
And we need some radical changes here. Here's what I believe from having spent time with the president-elect. He was one of the people who helped me in the Hamdan case, and he particularly coached me. So I got an insight into, when he was a senator, his value system. He's a former public defender. He believes in fairness. But we're going to have to help him by demonstrating publicly that things are unfair. If we build the space for him, I'm confident he will go where we need. But we're not going to do that by sitting back and saying, hey, Mr. President, do this for us. You know, he got 80 million votes and he needed every one of them. That's absolutely right. Because he won the election, though he got 80 million votes by 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. Arizona, Wisconsin, and
Georgia.
That without that, it's 269, 269.
Mm-hmm.
40,000 votes there. Yeah. 40,000. Yeah. So he's in let's understand, where we really are politically. And yes, he doesn't win. Hey, look, Michigan, Muslims showed up. That was a great effort.
Mm-hmm.
The
Muslims really came out in the rock the vote in Michigan, and that made the difference.
Yeah,
or one of the factors that made the difference.
It's hard to at 150,000. Who could you do without? Who could you do without? But he's not going to be able to help any one particular group. Understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
So if that's the case, then
what I say. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. You're saying you cannot help any particular group, and of course we're going to be concerned about ourselves. The president-elect Biden has promised to end President Trump's Muslim ban.
Yes.
What expectations can we have?
Okay, we have the expectation that he will end overt discrimination.
Okay.
Overt.
But what about the ban?
Muslim court, right. But that's not ending covert discrimination. The discrimination inside the national security policies. He didn't say, I'm going to end guilt by association.
Right.
He didn't say, I'm going to revitalize the FBI's programs and stop. The FBI can target a community with no probable cause whatsoever. They can put in informants and try and build a case. And this is unique to Muslims. They can't do that for right-wing extremists, but they can do it for Muslims. He didn't say, I'm going to change that. He didn't say that I'm going to give more transparency on FISA. He didn't, or the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. He didn't say that I'm going to give clear access to secret evidence. He didn't say I'm going to revise the terrorism guidelines. He didn't say I'm going to give more process for the no-fly list. He didn't say I'm going to give some process for the terrorist watch list. He didn't say that I'm going to end the controlled application and review and resolution program. All of those things, if we want to make changes on, we're going to have to make him. Okay?
Right. And Charlie, you basically outlined the what is it? You just outlined the greatest hits of the violations of
the Obama
of the constitutional rights for Muslims in America. This is the greatest hits right here.
Right. Keep in mind, that's the ironic thing on the Constitution. The one people who did not have constitutional rights were Muslims. This is why Trump could do overt discrimination. If I'm not in the United States and I'm not a U.S. citizen or a U.S. person, a person defined as someone physically here, then I don't have the protections of the Constitution. And so those countries could be targeted solely because they're Muslim. I'm all for ending the Muslim ban because it's stupid and it's wrong, and it doesn't enhance our security.
Right.
And the inability to take pressure off refugee camps and things like that creates terrorists. This is just dumb policy. What they're doing, what the Trump administration was doing, was just flat out cruel and foolish policy. Being cruel and oppressive creates terrorists. The second part doesn't prevent it, but it does diminish our Constitution. These are policies that are left over. We've got to fight these. Now is as good a time as ever because we can get back to focusing on this. This is going to require, and one of the things to understand is that the United States as a governmental institution is like a huge ship. Okay? And on a huge ship, here's what we know. Started out as a naval officer. You're on a huge ship. It takes miles. If you turn off the engines or just stop the engines on a super tanker, it keeps going for 15 miles before it stops. If you want to turn 20 degrees, it takes minutes. It slowly turns. It doesn't turn quickly. Government is bigger than any huge super tanker. It doesn't stop instantaneously and it doesn't turn quickly. What we have is we've taken the hands off the wheels of the guy who was throwing it in a truly dangerous direction. But that doesn't mean it's going to turn back. It just stops it from turning further. It may, part on it. If we're going to turn it back, we've got to help. We can't just sit there and say, hey, look, we had an election, we win, but that's over. How'd that work out during the Obama administration? The biggest abuses stopped. They stopped targeting charities. But, the fact that other than that, nothing else stopped. And, fortunately, because we were there, while the Trump administration tried to target charities, they weren't successful. In part because because of work that had been done before we came into existence, and in part because of work we did. Okay? But other than that, we're going to find ourselves in a position where we have to continue to fight for these freedoms and for these rights, because if you count on a president to do it for you or an administration, I think you miss the point. I remember, President Obama was the largest change leader I'd ever seen elected in my lifetime. Okay? And I was fortunate enough to meet with him early on in the administration. And I listened to him, and he was talking about Guantanamo, which I'd been intimately involved with. And I realized that this was not what I'd hoped for. It certainly was not what the civil rights organizations that were also present were had hoped for. And he said to us very simply, if you want more, you're going to have to make me. Unfortunately, we didn't make him. The opposite happened. Rather than closing Guantanamo, Congress made him keep it open. Rather than ending the commission, Congress made him keep him going. Rather than releasing everyone as he'd hoped, Congress limited that. Why? Because nobody made, there's a limit to what he can do.
Right. So
And
it's
if
like getting him into office, making him the head of the administration is just the first step. When you say you gotta make him, you gotta move people. You gotta start a movement for whatever it is you're trying to get done.
What we believe in the part is, here's what we believe. Now, there's political movements and all that. My take on it is we're a little different than everybody else.
Right.
Our primary way to do that is in court by showing due process and promoting the need for due process, showing where it's lacking. That if we're in court demonstrating the injustices, that will have an effect. And it has an effect on whoever's in the Oval Office, whoever's the director of the FBI. I believe in a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And to me, I fight in the idea, not that I have the man that I want, but I fight for the law that's on the books.
Right. And this is where we need to move from defense to offense, that we have to, if there's something that we want, then we have to not only demand, but metaphorically speaking, twist the arm of whoever's in the Oval Office administration to make it happen, because we cannot count on them to do it automatically. There has to be a concise and deliberate effort to make something happen.
Right. And the best way to do that is in court.
Right.
I say, we could get into the streets, etc. There's a part for arguing. There's a part for political activism. But if we look at other discriminated groups, whether it be gay and lesbian people in this country, whether it be people of color, whether it be Japanese Americans, etc., they did not just win in public opinion. They won in court.
Right.
And court, over time, you have to shape both. And that's why I say facts and law matter. Because facts, as people get to understand and know the facts, I believe that Americans are basically good, even if we're horribly divided. And when they see the facts and they see injustice, they can recognize it. And we have to argue to the courts that this is not law. This is inappropriate under the law. We have to demonstrate to them that it does not work. And we have to demonstrate that our legal arguments have merit. That takes case selection. That takes arguing an intentional part on it. And what we've done is we've picked the areas where there's the greatest abuse in the national security realm. And we've tried to focus on those to bring attention. And, as I said, we've learned, we've done, and we're continuing to do. And now we'll be teaching as well. That's what to look forward from us in the past. We're not going to stop learning. I don't know a professor who says, I'm now a professor, I don't need to learn anything else. We'll keep learning. We're going to keep doing. Because doing is learning, and doing is necessary. And doing teaches. Doing is all three. And we're going to make a concerted effort to teach. And we think that that's for our next 3 to 4 years is going to have a plan. The last 4 years have been all about doing because, gosh, knew that they were doing. But the next 4 years, we need to teach. And if we can build the momentum for that, then we can make real and lasting change. And real and lasting change takes time. The Japanese, there's one of the most famous cases in World War II is Fred Korematsu versus the United States. Fred Korematsu was interned unjustly and unconstitutionally. The Supreme Court upheld his internment. Fred Korematsu fought that for 52 years before it was overturned. I heard him twice. It takes time, but with your donors and MLFA and the community support, we're here till it gets done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Charlie, our hour is just about up. Before we close, is there anything you'd like to add?
I'd like to add and just say thank you to you and to all of the people at MLFA. Let's understand, every client I take, I start with this, that we're made possible by a generous grant from the Muslim Legal Foundation. We don't do this work, and we're proud to do the work for MLFA. We're proud to become the firm MLFA would hire, the firm of choice. But we don't exist without MLFA. And MLFA, Khalil, yourself, and everybody who's worked so hard for so long, they don't exist without the donors.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking to you and each one of you on this Giving Tuesday, if you've already given, thank you. If you haven't given yet, learn more about us and the work we do. If you have any questions, and if you need our help, what I like best was when I would say, hey, look, if you need our help, go to MLFA's website or go to CLCMA's website, and we want to hear from you. Your voices, your concerns. We're your organization, you and the donors. We belong to you. So let us know how we're doing, what we need to do, and what you can do, what we can do better, because we want to hear from you. Thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To our viewers and listeners, the Constitutional Law Center for Muslims in America, which is funded by a grant fund by the Muslim Legal Fund of America, has about 100 open cases right now. We receive applications every day from people who are going through unjust challenges and obstacles. The time to act against oppression and persecution is now. Brothers and sisters, you can help and support victims of injustice. You can click on the link below and make a donation, or you can go to our website and donate by going www.mlfa.org/give, and you can also volunteer, support through volunteering by visiting volunteer.mlfa.org. Mr. Charles Swift, I'd like to thank
Thank
you
you for
again for being
And
our
please,
guest today.
it's my pleasure to come on this show. So share this so that you know what's going on. And
Yeah,
I pledge to you that I'm going to be back. I hope
yeah.
you'll.
I definitely definitely want to bring you back, Charlie. Definitely,
I pledge I'm
these were
coming back. I hope you, any one of you like this, tell somebody else about it, and we'll be back. And I'm not the only guest. You don't have to listen to me every week.
all right, sounds great. Thank you so
Okay.
much for everybody for taking the time to speak to us. To our viewers, join us next time here on MLFA's Facebook page or YouTube channel next week, Tuesday, December 8th at 5 p.m. Central. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to share this video and give your feedback. This is the show about justice. I'm Ayman Taleb. Have a good evening and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.